I want to talk to you about the story of Purim here. I have a whole book. We're going to finish the whole entire book. Are you ready? No, joking. But I want to speak to you about the story of Purim in the short time that we have and really go through some of the powerful messages of Purim. So, it says, I just lose my concentration. So it says that the story of Purim, right? You all remember something about the story? So the Talmud says, where is the story in the Torah? We know that the story came after the Torah and they made a book about it called the Book of Esther. But where in the Torah do we see a sign of the story? So it says, where do we see Haman? Haman was the bad guy. Boo. Right? So where do we see Haman in the Torah? Where is he written? And normally where we look for things is always towards the beginning. Everything starts from the beginning. The earlier you go, the more powerful you see a message. The more powerful a message is. It's like that in life also. When you go, I was speaking about this previously, you look at a little seed, it has the secrets of the entire person in it. The earlier you go to the beginning of something, the more it's going to have more information in that very small amount about all of your future. It's going to tell you a much bigger story. So the Talmud looks at the beginning and it says, where's the first word that Haman is written? It says, we found it. What is it? It's after Adam ate from the tree, which he was told not to eat. So there were many, many trees he could have eaten from. There was one tree that he wasn't meant to eat from. Okay, without getting into the details of that story, because that's another whole study on its own, which is fascinating. But just take the basics of that story of Adam and this tree. He was told, you can eat from any tree you want. And the Midrash says that he had available to him hundreds of thousands of types of trees. Every type of fruit, every type of tree. There was one tree he was told not to eat from. And what does he do? He eats from the one, it's like kids, right? The one that you say don't do is the one that the person does. It says, Mayim gnuvim yimtaku, stolen water is always sweeter. What that person has is nicer than what I have. You know, stolen, I'll need to get it. Let me try and get it. That person's relationship is much better than mine because I see only the good parts of it in public. That's how we think. So, right, the grass is green on the other side. You've heard that before? So, Mayim genuvim yimtaku means that water that is stolen always appears to be sweeter. And actually, it could sometimes be sweeter. So, Adam was told, you have thousands of trees that you can eat from. And he says, no, I want this one. You told me not this one. Now I want that one more than all the others. That's why a parent has to always be very careful when he says no to his child. Because you know, when you say no, that's where it's going to be. So you have to make sure if you're saying no, you really need to say it. Not just say it all the time. Eventually the kid will rebel. You have to make sure you're saying it when you really need to. Also in life, not only with a child, but with life also, you've got to be careful before you say no. You've got to be careful when you say yes too. You can't be just affirmative all the time. But also in a relationship, in someone has ambitions that you are very different or in work. And he comes up with this crazy idea and you're like, where did that come from? So naturally, we oppose it, so we'll say no. But we're actually not meant to say no too quickly. So God says you can have thousands of trees, eat whatever you want, but just this one tree, don't eat. And Adam says, no, I'll eat from it. So what happens after? God says to Adam, hello, Adam, where are you? As if God doesn't know where he is. He was introduced to confusion. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into the story, but something very interesting happens. God says the word Haman. He says, Hamin ha'etz, was it from that tree which I told you not to eat that you ate from? God, it's not a school. Adam knows what he ate from, and God knows what tree he ate from. But he's asking him, was it from that tree? What's the question? It was a rhetorical question. There were so many you could have eaten from. You had the entire world to yourself, literally. You're Adam. You had and Eve. You had so much you could have eaten from. The entire world. And there's that one thing you couldn't get. You had to eat that also. And there comes the word Haman. Did you really need to do that? And guess what happens with Haman? Same story. What happens with Haman? Exactly the same story. He's the exact story of that word Haman in the Torah. What does he do? He has everything. He comes in the highest position. It says in the Megillah, Vayinaseu, God, Achashverosh, but through God's plan, the king of the Persian Empire made this Haman equal to him. He saw he's wise and he has ideas. You come my advisor, you come like me. I'm still the king, I have the title king. I'll be the CEO, but you'll be the, whatever you call the other guy after the CEO. Right? So, but you're like me. So he lifts up Haman to a very high position. Haman now gets a mansion in the center of 127 different countries that Achashverosh owns. Persian Empire was very wealthy and powerful. And he says to Haman, you've got everything now. But there was one problem. He put a god on his neck, hanging on his neck. And he had pride. And he demanded new rule. Everyone has to bow down to me when I walk past. Not only do you stand for me, bow down. Literally. Prostrate yourself. Go all the way, flat, and on the floor. That's what he said. And there's one man that said, no, I'm not doing that. Who was it? Mordechai, the leader of the Jewish people. He said, no, I'm not doing that. And he said, I'm not doing it for a number of reasons. First of all, because there's a trick here behind it. This guy, Haman, is putting a god, hanging a god on his neck, and he wants people to serve his. I'm not doing it, it's idol worship. And Haman says, it says, the anger started coming into him. But he didn't want to express it so much. And then he says, who is this guy? Why is he not listening? Why is he not bowing down to me? He's one of the Jewish people. At first he says, I want to destroy Mordechai. And then he says, I want to destroy the whole Jewish people. Why? Because you can't come along with a narrative that you want to kill just one person because he's not bowing to you. It's cheap. So you have to make a whole new narrative. His people, his whole group. And it started off with just hating Mordechai, the leader of the Jewish people, and it spread to the entire Jewish people. Why? Because of his ego. And what did he say? Haman said he used to come home and he says, look, I have all this. I have a nice home. I have a mansion. I'm second to the king. I'm wealthy. I'm respected. The whole world bows down to me. But then he says the most powerful words of the Megillah. Every word's powerful. I can't really say that, but one of the powerful words. He says, and all this, all that I have is enenu shoveli. It's not worth it to me. Everything I have is worthless because that one guy is not bowing down to me. And there goes the source of evil. The source of hate, evil, is the concept of ego. The idea of no boundaries. And eventually what happens is a person says, even what I have is worthless. I still need that one little thing. You've got every tree that you can eat from. That one thing is bothering you? Yeah. That's the one thing I need to have. But we are humans. Humans are incapable of completing everything. We're physically incapable of taking over everything. Yeah, but I want it. And it's that person that is the start or the concept of evil, is not being able to find joy. And that's the holiday, by the way. It's called the holiday of happiness. Not being able to find joy in where you're at already. And this is the statement that Shlomo HaMelech, Solomon, says. A tzaddik, a righteous person, always eats lesova nafsho, to satiate himself. He doesn't eat too much. He actually hates eating too much. Why? Because he says, I'm going to get used to it. What happens on one day when you break the diet and you have too much sugar? The next day you want more. That's how life works. So you better stop now, because tomorrow it's going to continue. And the next day it's going to continue a little more. You've got to cut it short. So that's why it says a righteous person is very conscious about his diet. Don't ask me why so many rabbis are overweight like me. That's another discussion. But that's because of Shabbat, and you're allowed to. What? Calories don't count. No, but really speaking, Maimonides says that a righteous person needs to be careful with how he eats. A righteous person needs to be aware. Maimonides has a whole section about being healthy. This is a requirement. It's actually very important to be healthy and not overeat. Today we have an abundance of food in ways that we've never seen before. It says, by the way, that in the end of days, where we're at now, what we call now the times towards Mashiach, it says that one of the signs that we're in this time is that there'll be a lot, but still expensive. It's crazy. You go into what used to be called Ralph's. I don't see them anymore. But you go into a store, Smart and Final, whatever. You walk in there, they have a whole fridge section of milks. So many milks. So many bottles of milk. You walk in there, you're like, whoa. And then you look at the price. Gee. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Right, you look at the price. It was $6. $6? Like $5? What's going on? I should say Moses. No, gee whiskers is... Anyway. Mo. So you walk in, you see the milk, and you're like, whoa, it's so expensive. It's crazy. Supply and demand, I mean, you should teach me this. Supply and demand doesn't work like that. The more we have available, bless you, the more we have available, the cheaper it should be, right? That's just basic economics. But for some reason in our generation, we have plenty, and yet it's still expensive. Yes, Brian?
At that point, you need to start your own milk company, right?
Yeah. Well, go figure. You own milk company, you own car company, you own this, you own that. At some point, you need to rely on that money to buy you other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's an interesting fact. It says that this is a unique time where you'll see that the fruits will give its fruits, yet the price will still be expensive. Anyway, that was off topic. Going back to what we're talking about. You have everything, and you still said, it's not worth it to me. Who did that? Haman. And who else did that? Adam. Adam did it with a good intention. That's another whole... Again, I don't want to get into the story of Adam and the tree, which I just did, but not to too much extent. At the end of the day, Haman had everything, and he said, it's not worth it for me. And this is what Solomon says. A righteous person eats to satiate himself. That's it. And not just satiate his body, his soul also. So that I can be happy with afterwards when I eat. Not just at the time that I'm eating, but I feel good after. However, the stomach of the wicked is always lacking. He's not eating anymore. The stomach, after he's eaten. The person that's righteous, before he eats, he's still hungry. But he says, I'll eat exactly what I need and that's it. And by the way, this is not only about food. It's just somebody who's mistapek b'muat, that's what we call it. Someone who's happy with the right amount. You can live nice, but with the right amount, for the right cause. Ubeten reshaim techsa. But the stomach of the wicked are still lacking. What does that mean? His stomach is lacking. He filled himself up. He's stuffed. He just had a steak. He ate. And what does he do? He sits back. Oh, so annoying. It sounds like the Brits love doing that. I don't know about here, but in Britain it's very, how's the weather? Terrible. Yes. But you get what I'm saying. Somebody who's full, well eaten, full, and still says, I'm lacking something. That's what he says. The righteous, they eat when they're satiated, but the stomach of the wicked is always lacking. And that is the difference between Jacob and Esav also. Remember Jacob and Esav? The two twin brothers? Esav was the forefather of Haman. He was the great-great-grandfather of Haman. Great, multiple generations. And when he tried to kill his brother Jacob, he finally meets his brother after many years. And he says to his brother, Yeshli Rav, I have almost everything. I have a lot. But Jacob says, Yeshli Kol, I have everything. Now, Jacob had a hard time. It wasn't easy for him. But that's how life is. In life, no one has everything. It's not possible. And those that have everything, they're still lacking. They're lacking in joy, in mental health sometimes, and many other aspects that other people don't, meaning, purpose. So a righteous person, he eats to exactly what he needs, because he knows that tomorrow, if I don't, I'm going to want more and more and more, and it starts becoming that everything I have is worthless. It says, Ezehu Ashir, Hasameach Bechelko, who's wealthy? Someone who finds joy in what he has. We study that in Pirkei Avot, or we will study it. Pirkei Avot. So that's what he's saying. So that's where Haman is in the Torah. Haman is in the Torah when you have a case of someone that has everything, one thing he can't have, and he still says it's not enough. And that was the force of the destruction. I don't want to tie this to geopolitics, but we've got to get into it. Look what's going on with Russia. That's a big part of the world. I mean, it's pretty big. It's actually the biggest country in the world. Am I wrong? Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's the biggest country. Not Israel. Ukraine, 600,000 kilometers wide. It's massive. Yet, suddenly it's mine again. I need to go into a war. No one's attacking you. No one said they will attack you. No one threatened you. Yet I feel like I need to take over this. I have what I have, but I want more. Why do you need more? And if somebody looks at that way, in life that way, then what he has is also junk. It's not good enough either. And trust me, a country that really wants, there's plenty of resources and materials in their country, there's smart people in their country, but they could have used their own place, focus on their own place, bringing out the energy of what they have, unifying it, not taking advantage of its people, and then they would be flourishing on their own. There wouldn't be a need to go and invade another country, which is only going to damage themselves more in the long run. Because in Judaism, we know, and history has proven, that the righteous prosper. That's it, it's a fact. So, this is the difference. So then the Talmud asks another question. The Talmud asks, so where do we see Esther in the Torah? She was the queen. By the way, we don't talk about this, but after the story of Esther finishes, the story of Achashverosh and the Persian Empire, where does Esther go? She's the queen. She remains married to this man, dedicated to a dictator, a crazy person, all for the sake of originally saving her people. Well, she didn't really have a choice. She was pushed in. She tried every way not to be into it. There was 1 year, it says in the story, that after Achashverosh, maybe I should tell you the story a bit. Does everyone know the story well? Tell you the story a bit. But after Achashverosh kills his first wife, Vashti, he says, I'm going to look for another wife. And he orders every single woman to come into his town, into the center of Persia, in Shushan, and they need to go through 1 year process of beautifying themselves before they can meet him. 1 year. 6 months in oils, Shem and Amol. We think we're cool now. The essential oils were back then too. Lots of them. 6 months in essential oils, and then another 6 months in different places of spicing and smells that would actually affect the oils on the skin. First you have the oil, then the skin is affected by the smell. So for another 6 months, in another section, it's like a factory. It's disgraceful. The things that can shake a person's mind, that to understand that people lived in such horrifying ways. But this is what happened. And he brought Esther in too. And what did Esther say? I don't want this. He found, Vatilakach Esther. Esther was forced. He found her through obviously the police or whatever they had then. And they found where she was. They heard about her. They brought her in. She was a yatomah. She was an orphan. She lost her parents, her mom at birth, and her dad after her mom was conceived. And her uncle, Mordechai, was the one that looked after her. And she was a very beautiful woman and a very righteous woman. And she didn't want to go. And for 6 months, for an entire year, when she was in all this beauty parlors, whatever you want to call it, she refused to put oils on. She refused to make herself look extra beautiful. She didn't want it. Everyone else was running. Oh, give me the chance. But she didn't want it. And Achashverosh sees her and he says, V'tisachen v'chesed be'enav. By the way, a lot of times we use this word. When Achashverosh finally sees her, she walks in. She didn't put on all that makeup. He sees her and he says, she's beautiful. It says he found favor in her eyes. And it also said that she had chesed on her. He saw an appearance of kindness in her that he didn't see in anyone else. By the way, it says also in the Talmud, Keitzad meragdim lifnei chatan ve'akala. How do you dance in front of a chatan and kala, bride and groom? When you go to a wedding, by the way, and you dance, in a kosher way, of course, right? But when you go to a wedding and you dance for the bride and groom, you are doing a mitzvah. You should know that you're doing a mitzvah. It says that you're doing tremendous things. You're partnering in building a home. So when a person goes in a wedding, it says, Kala na'a, you sing a song, and you say, Kala na'a, what a beautiful bride you have. V'chasuda, and so filled with chesed. By the way, they're dressed in white, the bride. White is one of the colors of chesed. So the idea of seeing a bride is the idea of chesed. And we actually meant to say she's beautiful and filled with chesed. You could see chesed in her. By the way, it's a very important idea. When it comes to... Now everyone's phone is going to go off. Great, I'm done. All right, man. Amber, someone's adopted? Again, someone who has everything but didn't want something else. Another one. It's true, if you get to the core of it, yeah, well, exactly. Or whatever it is. If you get to the core of it, he's not happy with what he has. And he's not training himself to be happy with what he has. That's the core of the problem. So, in a marriage or in a relationship, you've got to look for two things: beauty attraction, and also, what was I saying? Chesed, kindness.
That's it?
From them, other things develop. But the main two attributes, there's a physical aspect and a spiritual aspect. The spiritual aspect is expressed in terms of chesed, of kindness. Olam chesed yibaneh. The world is, you build worlds with kindness. And you can build a home through kindness. But someone who's in a relationship, either side, who's taking, then that's not a relationship. The definition of making a relationship is that you give so that the other person becomes part of it. Not that each one takes to themselves. Like we'll both watch a Netflix movie, each one on our phone. I watch it at the same time, okay. And they're on their phone, and we both press play. Now there you go. Another one? It's my phone. Oh, it's Android now. Androids are late. See, Androids are late. Anywho. So, in a relationship, you got to look for the external, but also the beauty inside, which is expressed in chesed. You can never know someone perfectly. It's another discussion for relationships.
You can never find someone perfectly?
No, I don't. You can never know someone perfectly. And that's another discussion for relationships. If that's true, then how can you ever marry them? You need a certain level of emunah. You can never know someone perfectly. You can't marry someone before you're married to them.
Wait, you can't what?
True? So how can you know them in a way of marriage before you're married? Huh?
Like you'll never fully know them.
You'll never fully know them.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can't just like you jump into the water.
At some point you have to jump in. At some point you have to say, okay, this makes the most sense, and I'm going to do this. Some people wait till they're just like, okay, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to have kids. And some people do it when they're really attracted, but you should know, I'll tell you something very important. I'm very for the idea of soulmates, but I'm very skeptical of that term. Do you know why? Sorry? No, not because of that. Don't get into that one. Right? I like the term soulmates, but I'm very skeptical of the way we use it. Do you know why?
You don't have to put any effort in for someone destined to be with.
Okay, you think that there's no effort that's needed, yes?
It puts a lot of pressure.
It puts a lot of pressure. Is this my soulmate? Is this my soulmate? Is it not? Is it not? But there's a problem here, there's a problem there. It's a lot of pressure. Anyone else? Soulmates. It's a true term, but I'm skeptical, I'm uncomfortable with the way we use it. And I'm asking why. Can you think of why I'm uncomfortable with it?
It could be soulmates that aren't just like romantic partners.
Okay. You're trying to,
Like friends and family that.
oh, we use that. Okay, that's very true. We use that term in the wrong way a lot of times. Like just by friends. Oh, it's my friend, so we're soulmates. But when we're not. Once there's actually a guy in the community who really likes me. He's very friendly with me. A man who's a very nice guy, and I'm very friendly with him. We get on really well. He's very warm and loving, and we talk Torah together. So, wait, let me just tell you the funny joke. Wait, you're going to laugh now. Wait, you're laughing now. Wait a second. So we sit for Shabbat one time, and Shira was there. So he says to Shira, this is my soulmate. So Shira says to him, as long as you're just soulmates, I'm okay with it. Anyway, where were we? Oh, soulmates. Why am I uncomfortable with the term soulmates? I'll tell you, yes.
Is it because the word soul means something different in Judaism?
No, it's when we say soul, we mean neshama, like that's.
Because there are many.
Sorry?
There are many possible soulmates to each person.
So that's what he was saying, and that's another discussion. I'll tell you why. Because when you think soulmate, you think they need to be perfect. Kind of what you were saying.
Completely each other.
Yeah, like we're absolutely complete. We just Walk in, we look at each other, yo, this is unbelievable. I say yes, she says yes. I say no, she says no. We go, he goes, you go. The perfect relationship. We're just thinking of this imaginative relationship where everything is just absolutely bliss. But hello, is that human? Is that normal? Do you think every relationship is going to be perfect with no flaws in it? Are you perfect? So why would the other side be perfect? You get it? Soulmates does not mean that we don't have to work towards being or seeing the soul in each other. But there are many barriers that we've built in between that are gonna, as long as there's no big flaws in between you, but that's why I'm skeptical of that term. People ask me, soulmates, I'm not so comfortable always. Because when we think of that term, we think of it as like completely compatible. But no one is. No one's completely compatible. Marriage is work. By the way, the definition of marriage in Hebrew is kiddushin and nisu'in, which means to sanctify oneself, to elevate oneself. Because through marriage, a person changes. You grow, you have to now deal with someone else, or they have to deal with you, or the differences and the changes. Okay, so anyway, the main point I was trying to get is that he saw Esther and she was beautiful. And she was filled with chesed. She was filled with kindness. And that was one of the reasons he said, I want this person. I've not seen this in anybody else. So the Talmud says, where do we know Esther from? Where do we see the name Esther in the Torah? And the Torah says, we found it. In Deuteronomy, in the end, towards the end of the Torah, it's the first time we see, not the end, but the first time towards the end, is the first time we see the word Esther. And what is it? The Torah says, Va'anochi, God is talking. And he says, Va'anochi, Anochi is, like when he gave us the Torah, he says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. Anochi, I, the real definition of I, Haster astir panai, I will hide my face. I will surely hide my face. Haster astir, the word Esther means to hide. Why? Because God says that there are times as a human being, you don't see my face. I'll hide my face. What does it mean I hide my face? By us, God is not a physical being. It's not a physical person. What does it mean that God hides his face? Moses asked God, show me your face. And a rabbi said, what does it mean he's asking, show me your face? God's not physical. And the rabbis say, I need to understand why there's suffering in this world. That was the question that Moses was asking. And he said, show me your face, meaning, show me how you work in the future. Why is there suffering? Because we don't see the bigger picture. I get up in the morning and I miss the alarm clock and I feel annoyed. I have a job meeting. Am I suffering? I am suffering. But only because I don't know what's going to happen in half an hour from now. I get up and I run to my bus stop. I'm half an hour late. I run to the bus stop and now I'm waiting there and I miss the bus. I was half an hour late and I missed the second bus at 7:30, let's say. Am I suffering inside? Of course. And I say, I'm suffering. This is unfair. Only because I don't see the future. And then, as I'm waiting again for the next bus, which is going to come in 15 minutes, a friend of mine drives past and says, hey, yo, dude, what are you doing here? Do you need a ride? And I say, yeah, where are you going? He says, I'm going to this and this street. Oh, that's exactly the road I need to get to. He takes you and you get there 5 minutes earlier than you would have been before. Now you look at the picture and what seems as suffering then all fits in because you see the bigger picture. So Moses asks God, can you show me your face? God says, no, you can only see the back of my head, but you can't see in front of me. What does that mean? You can only see the past. The only way that you can see God is in the past, but not in the future. You can't tell ahead of time what's going to be. You don't know. And because of that, sometimes things don't work out. And we're like, why is this happening? And then only later on, I put the dots together. I'm like, it's perfect that I didn't get that job. Because if I would have got that job, I would have worked under that person. Look what happened to him. The worst. I'm looking up there because I don't know. I don't want to point at anyone. So look what happened to him. He got in the scandal and he was doing all those things, and thank goodness I didn't work under that company 20 years ago when I got interviewed by him. And I was desperate to get in and devastated that I didn't get into it. You see, I don't see the future, but I will see the past. And that's what we believe. That sometimes later on in time, we look back and we say, okay, everything makes much more sense now. I spoke about it last week. Challenges in our life. Some people have a challenge of laziness. Some people have a challenge of anger. Some people have... God said, when He created mankind, that He saw everything is good. Your inclination to do good is good, and your inclination to do bad is also good. Why? Your desire to be lazy and sleep in, that's good. He says, Tov me'od, it's very good. Why very good? Because even your desire to do bad is good. You get angry, good, that's very good. You wouldn't mind a teacher or someone telling you that when you were younger, right? Reverse psychology. Good, good, my son, good. But we can't say it. But God says it as an overall picture. The bad behaviors in us are good, very good. Why? Because imagine if I was born in this world with none of those. Imagine I was born in this world with no challenges in me. Only the desire to do good, to be kind, to give, not to take advantage of others, to visit the sick. Only good things. To always eat health. Never had any challenge at all. So there will be no difference of me on the day that I came into this world to the day that I leave. Absolutely zero. The only thing is white hairs. Right? That's it. Not much difference. I'm sure many other things, but you get my point. What?
Are you sure? Isn't it like, I would assume that you start with a little bit acts of goodness that you do, but as you grow, you do more goodness. It's not necessarily that you're...
Okay, the little bit of goodness is coming from a certain sense of bad in you that's reluctant to do that good. But if there wasn't any desire to do that, then you would be equally as good at the beginning as you would be later on.
I was just thinking about your inability because you're 3 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old.
Okay, so that's
You get your inability to
So-
get more things like that.
Yeah, so you're asking good is that when you're younger, you're developing a learning mechanism of how to do things. But those are just physical restrictions. Your inability is just a physical restriction from you, but it's not a talent in you that you're building. Okay, this is just something that's holding you back. You know, a 3-year-old kid, let's say, is not able to see as well as I can see. Let's say, I think they can. They actually probably can see better. But let's say when a baby's newly born, their vision isn't as clear. Okay? And then eventually they develop a vision. That's not a character development. That's not a growth. That's just something physical that was holding them back. And now they opened up and they're allowed to live to their fullest potential as they open up. But my point isn't whether a 3-year-old is living to his potential, or when he's 4, he lives to his potential, 5 to his potential. If I live to my fullest potential my entire life because all I have is good, then I'm not changed. I might change physically, but those are only external factors, not within me. Okay, so that's what we say. So the challenges in us is very good because we don't see the future. Now, people will ask, how can this make sense? There are challenges in the world that really are very hard, like children dying and things like that are inexplicable, very hard to understand. That's another discussion. there is another idea of reincarnation. There's many aspects that could happen. We could talk about each individual case. Again, we don't know the future, but we only know the past. So, God says that there are times in life that I hide from you. V'anochi haster astir panai. And normally he does hide in situations when we make mistakes. Just like when Adam ate from the tree and God said, interesting, God said, did you eat? God's hiding from him. Where are you? God's hiding from him. When we make mistakes, the automatic reaction is that we feel a certain distance from God. Okay, a certain distance from a sense of good or not. So, just to clarify, Esther, the Talmud says, where is she in the Torah? And it says, we found her. When God says, I hide myself from you. And I hide what? My face, the future. And what happens in the story of Esther? If you look at the Megillat Esther, by the way, the definition of Megillat Esther is to reveal. Megillah is milashon legalot. It comes from the word to reveal. Esther, we just said, means hiddenness. If you look at the story of Esther, you see lots of parts which do not make sense. Suddenly he's angry, he decides to kill his wife, then he looks for another one, well, that's the way it goes. He kills her, just that's the way it goes. Okay, kill her, let's find another one. And then later on, when he does marry Esther, Haman is this man that actually was the one that advised him to kill his first wife, is the one that then says, let's kill all the Jews, and pays money for it. And Ahasuerus says, okay, do it. And he makes this rule that all Jews need to be killed. And everything doesn't make sense. By the way, God is hidden from this book. Not once do you have the name of God in the book of Esther. It's 10 chapters. Not once do you have God's name in it. He's completely hidden from this story. All you see are a bunch of coincidences. A bunch of situations where you're like, oh, this is crazy, that's interesting, that happened, this happened. A bunch of little bits. And then at the end you see, wow, everything comes together. Everything was planned. It's all perfect. So, when the Talmud says, where do we see Esther? It says, we see Esther. She was the one that was able to see God in the hiddenness. To have hope, even in situations when things are not going our way. That is how someone achieves the opposite of Haman. That's what the Torah is telling us. That's what the Talmud is saying. Haman was the man that said, I have everything, but I'm lacking one thing. That Mordechai is not bowing down to me. And he said, everything I have now is worthless. Nothing I have is good. Because one person is not bowing down. So all my past, everything I have, worthless. He doesn't know how to deal with suffering. That kind of person will never know how to deal with suffering. Because he can't find joy in what he has already. Esther was the opposite. What was she? In the darkness, she was able to say, look, I'm going to go to the king. I might be killed for it, but please fast and pray for me for 3 days. And that's what the Jewish people did. She was able to see God in the hiddenness. And what does that mean? What does that teach me? That in order to be a person, this is the final idea that I wanted to share. In order to be a person of happiness, it's to know that I can't see the future. And to know that there are challenges in my life right now. But I have hope and understanding that these challenges may eventually not be a challenge after all, later on in time. It's only because I can't see the future. And in this current present moment, it's not working out for me the way I want it. And the reason is because I don't see the future. That is the quality of Esther. There's something very interesting. I'll just tell you this. When somebody has a lot, he doesn't feel the need to store a lot. You have a lot of money, let's say. You have a lot in your bank. And you have cash. You don't feel the need to stock up on couches and whatever you get hold of. Why? Because there's no anxiety of how am I going to manage tomorrow without this pot if I need it. How am I going to manage when somebody doesn't have any money? When somebody, lo aleno, God forbid, someone's in a very poor situation. So they feel the need to stock up on everything. Physically, they feel the need to stock. Whenever they get hold of something, when am I going to get it again? I can't just let go of it. And what happens is that's honestly, a lot of times you see situations of homeless people and you're wondering, why are they collecting all this stuff? My daughter was asking this, and I was explaining to her, a lot of times, sometimes it's mental health, there's other issues, but I was explaining to her that when someone doesn't have, so what they're looking for is every time they find something that they do have, they're worried that might be taken away from them also. There's a certain sense of anxiety. Sorry? There's a term for it? Hoarding? Hoarding. There's a word for it. Sorry? How do you say that? How do you spell that? Oh, A-R. Okay, hoarding.
People have a lot of older adults. I mean, I haven't done home health, but I heard that there's some places where people they have hoarding problems, and these stories were I don't know, the second floor fell through and stuff and patients. I saw
there is a TV show about people like
I saw.
Really?
Oh, I haven't seen a TV show, but I saw
Niels,
patients
is it
with
Colette?
scratch marks, as if an animal got in there. I saw some weird things before, but I think the hoarding has to do with the lack, so they just hold on to it.
They hold on to stuff because they don't know how. Now that's a physical challenge that someone's going through. But spiritually, people do that too also. When I feel like I don't have a guidance in terms of how I look at life. I don't believe that there's a future, there's a plan. I feel like everything's random. So then there's anxiety of what's going to be tomorrow. Because maybe it's not going to work out for me. The lack of what we call emunah, which is faith.
basically חוסר שליטה.
Yes, the lack of control, it can drive someone crazy. The lack of control of life can drive someone spiritually crazy also. I don't know what's going to be with me tomorrow. How am I going to manage in a week from now? Anxiety comes a lot to do with the lack of purpose in this world. And I see that, someone else, randomly, this can happen to him, this can happen randomly to that person. So maybe it can randomly happen to me also. Some people are lucky, some people are unlucky. Maybe I'll be the unlucky one tomorrow. And anxiety starts filling in. But when it comes to emunah, there's no such thing as lucky or unlucky. When I see that everything has a purpose, every hour has a reason, every person I meet has a reason, every person I hear, everything I hear has a reason to it, a message to it. There's a reason why I can hear it. Everything has a purpose.
Right.
Yes.
So I heard this concept, or today, I heard it in the past too.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is not done to you, it's done for you.
Exactly.
And I think that little extra word of thinking about it is
Beautiful. I'm going to use that.
This challenge is exactly what I need right now. This is supposed to push me.
That's beautiful.
To listen. So everything that's happening to y'all is perfectly, exactly measured just for you to go through.
That's a beautiful way. It's for you, not to you. I love it. I'm going to use that from now on. So anyway, but that's Esther. And because she had that personality of seeing in the darkness that there is light, and by the way, that you will see the light. If you look for it, you will see it. You will see and notice situations where even if it's difficult, whatever it is, that good things are coming your way. And eventually, you will be wealthy in seeing that even though you're not perfect, you don't have everything, but you're not going to say, all this that I do have is worthless to me because I don't have this yet. That mentality comes from a lack of, from a sense of anxiety, spiritual anxiety, I'll call it, where there's a lack of faith and understanding that everything has a purpose. And you just aim to have everything and want more and more and more. And everything needs to go perfectly the way you want in order to be lucky and in this system where everything goes and happens to me, like you said. So that was the quality of Esther. And that's why, by the way, we celebrate by dressing up. We celebrate by dressing up because we're trying to realize that everything in this world has a hidden mask to it. Right? There's a reality. We're all so to speak in a hidden mask of another reality that's really going on. There's a bigger plan. And we don't see. People aren't always the way they seem. Things are not always the way they seem. This is not working out. That's not working. There's a bigger picture here. So what we do on Purim is we go outside of our physical comfort or reality, and we say that this is all a play. It's all part of a bigger play. It's all a mask. It's all a show. And we have a mitzvah to drink on Purim. Ad lo yada. Some say, well, what do you do if you're old? If you're incapable, you're going to drink? The doctor says you can't. Maimonides says you can also sleep. You go to sleep, lose a bit of consciousness in your sleep, and that's also fulfilling the mitzvah. I was waiting for someone to say that. A righteous person eats to what he needs. Anyway, so the problem with drugs is that besides for the fact that the drug is a problem in itself, I don't like getting into it because the people that do smoke it, they rationalize with me about it. No, it's very healthy, it's good for you. So I don't like to get into that argument, the people that are... And the truth is that when it comes a habit here and a habit there, and eventually it comes that yeah, exactly. It holds you back, and we don't know who you are anymore. Who is the real you? I'm not talking about, yes, alcohol is different. Alcohol is different. And you're right, alcohol is not something that you should be doing. The mitzvah is not every day, but only on Purim. The mitzvah is to drink, to also, again, to recognize that our control of reality isn't really in our control. There's a bigger picture here. And when someone drinks, you kind of let go of all the anxiety of trying to take control. That's one time a year. Don't learn that for every day. But that's a beautiful thing of losing that sense of consciousness for a second and just letting go. There's a reason for that, because that's what emunah is at a certain point, where you let go and you know that there's a bigger picture here that's in the picture. So that being said, that's the story, and I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget, on Purim you have 4 mitzvot. You have a mitzvah to hear the Megillah, hear the story. I don't know where you're going to go, but there is a mitzvah to hear it. There's plenty of places you can. I'll be reading it in the day before our party, so anyone who comes, you can hear it from me. Before the party. I don't know exactly the party start. You have to check on Eventbrite. 6:30, so probably 6. I'll read the Megillah as well for everyone that comes. There are 4 mitzvot. And I'll finish with this. There's a mitzvah to make a meal and sit down and have a good meal, to be happy. That's part of being happy. Eating and feeling good is part of being happy. It's for a cause, so it's good to do. Mishloach manot ish lere'ehu. There's a mitzvah to give 2 foods to a friend. Okay, manot is 2 foods, either a drink and a food or 2 foods to a friend. That's also a mitzvah. And there's a big mitzvah to give matanot le'evyonim, a gift to the poor. So you can go, there's many sites online, and you can give some tzedakah on the day of Purim, which is going to be tomorrow night and Thursday. And looking forward to seeing you at the party. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't know? Okay, whatever. Fine. Guys, have a happy Purim.